Oraxia, Warframe Spider Queen, and perhaps one of the most broken frames that I've ever come across. Have you ever wanted to web up enemies and watch as they struggle before you tear them apart? Oraxia can do that. Ever wanted to sling from building to building, like you're cosplaying as Spider-Man, and then descend upon your foes from above? That's also Oraxia. Imagine if a Warframe like Saren had infinite energy generation and could effectively maintain her abilities indefinitely with the right setup, while also being a health tank at the same time. Well, yeah, that's also Oraxia. And if that hasn't sold you yet, what if I told you that Oraxia could spawn little spiderlings? Ones that help stunlock an enemy to make a mercy killing easier. Or the fact that she can turn invisible when you wall latch. Yeah, Oraxia has a lot going on for her. So why don't we jump into the thick of it, shall we? You're probably wondering how to even get Oraxia in the first place, besides just buying her from the market, but we're not going to do that. It's actually quite simple. First, you need to have completed the hex to get access to the parts. You can acquire her components and blueprint from doing the Isle Weaver node in Deviri. Alternatively, if you're just generally unlucky with drops or RNG, you can just acquire the components from Akrithis in the Dorma Zone using Scuttler husks given to you by completing the Isle Weaver missions. Let's discuss her passive first, which is extremely simple and easy to get out of the way. When she latches to a wall, she goes invisible. This invisibility is also not broken by attacking or entering combat either, and it's also refreshable as long as you keep reattaching yourself to a wall. This essentially becomes easier with her fourth ability, meaning that you can essentially stay invisible permanently. Her first ability, Mercy's Kiss. It deals toxin damage to enemies as you jump to them. Now, what makes this ability strong is not only its inherent range, but also the fact it will instant kill pretty much everyone below a certain threshold. And upon death, the enemy will erupt with a crap ton of health and energy orbs. This scales on both ability strength and Parazon mods. And yes, you can one-shot Xmas units if they are below a certain threshold. Her second ability, Webbed Embrace. It has Oraxia chuck, yeah, I just said that, chuck a handful of webs at a surface, causing an AoE field to spread on point of impact that will immobilize most enemies. In addition to some toxin damage, this field will also apply a vulnerability debuff to anyone caught within it. This debuff does in fact scale with ability strength. Her third ability, Widow's Brood, which allows her to summon little spiderlings. She launches several darts in front of her, often auto-targeting any enemies within her field of vision and range while dealing toxin damage. When the enemy rots away, their death leaves behind a mini spider, a Scuttler. They run around and damage enemies, but the best part is they're actually affected by summon mods and Arcanes, which can greatly buff their damage. In addition to this, as they apply toxin to whatever they attack, they benefit from the Archon continuity mod, meaning they can apply corrosive stacks to whatever enemies they hit, and I'm not gonna lie, they hit a lot. I can't see anyone replacing this ability with a Helminth. It's just too good to remove. Her fourth ability, Silken Stride, which is arguably her strongest ability in her kit. Upon casting this ability, she manifests 4 spider legs that become her main form of movement. The movement speed of this ability is in fact affected by sprint mods, which you can equip in your Exilus slot if you're feeling sluggish while moving around. But you'll notice 2 things while in this state. 1, your melee is now replaced with Mercy's Kiss, which makes all melee builds with Oraxia unviable unless you Helminth Silken Stride. 2, your dodge is replaced by a web sling, like Spider-Man. Pressing your dodge key while looking at any surface within range will pull you directly to that surface, and if that surface is latchable, you'll automatically wall latch. This works very well with her passive, as well as making wall latching extremely easy. Besides these 2 changes, you receive a massive health buff that scales with ability strength. In addition, Oraxia also receives a toxin damage infusion on her equipped weapons, which becomes doubled when she's wall latched. This basically means she has toxic lash like Saren. And I'm not just saying that, it's pretty much the same thing. Whenever you fire your weapon, you'll gain an extra hit of pure toxin damage. This is not mixed with any other elements present on your weapon, and instead exists as its own independent status effect. When you kill enemies, they will explode into a burst of AoE toxin damage. In addition, since this is tied to her ability and not the weapon itself, it will trigger Archon continuity for corrosive damage. Now, compared to her other abilities, Silken Stride has a lot to unpack. I mean, it feels like they just mashed together several other abilities and merged them into one. And unlike some Warframes, Oraxia not only brings a lot to the table, but she also has a lot of synergies and combinations that can be used with her. And you almost don't want to use a Helminth on her. Like, I considered Roar for like a second, but since Silken Stride technically buffs her damage already, Roar actually ends up taking Silken Stride's slot instead if you use a Helminth. This also applies to other Helminths like Zata's Whisper and Eclipse. And I'm going to be completely transparent here. It's not really worth removing her spider legs for any of those. The damage increase from Silken Stride just blows away all the other competition. You're probably wondering how to make Oraxia endlessly generate energy, so I'm going to tell you how. A mod and an arcane, while also abusing Mercy Kiss's mechanics. Equilibrium and Arcane Energize. Equilibrium for health and energy conversion, and Arcane Energize for an extra boost of energy when you don't have enough. However, for this build, Arcane Energize isn't required. Plus, Equilibrium is much easier to get than Arcane Energize, and I don't expect everybody to have it, so it's just an optional mod. Oraxia doesn't require that much in terms of modding. She really only needs strength, range, duration, and a flow mod. Slap a health mod on top of that, and Equilibrium, you'll be good for the most part. And despite the fact that Oraxia is technically a late game frame, it's not out of the question for someone to buy her with Platinum. So here's an example of an early game build that will carry you through the star chart up until Steel Path. And here's the build that I am currently using, which you can see isn't entirely different from the one previously shown. The only exception being that I'm not using Stretch, and I am using Primed and Umber mods alongside Archon continuity. Now, onto Archon Shards and Arcanes you can use with Oraxia. Seeing as how she's primarily a Toxin Warframe and she spreads Toxin status with all of her abilities, using Emerald Archon Shards is the way to go with her. When paired with Archon continuity, you can easily reach maximum stacks on Corrosive and armor strip enemies frequently. Aside from using arcanes like Arcane Energize, we have Arcane Arachne, which is used in my build. This gives you a 150% damage bonus to both primary and secondary weapons when you wall latch. This buff does not expire once you've unlatched from a wall, by the way. It lasts for 30 seconds after this. Given that you'll frequently be web-slinging and attaching yourself to walls, this arcane will basically be constantly triggering and re-triggering whenever you wall latch, meaning it will have a near 100% uptime as long as you keep wall latching. Other arcanes you can use on Oraxia, not shown in this video, are Arcane Bellicose, Arcane Camisado, and Arcane Crepuscular, all of which synergize extremely well with her kit, buffing both her own personal damage and that of her scuttlers. For my closing thoughts here, I want to say that Oraxia is extremely good, and feels really good to play too. I think she's honestly probably one of the strongest Warframes up there, with Warframes like Weapons Platform Lavos, or Nuclear Sevagoth with his augments. You know, that one. The one that can tile clear by snapping his fingers like Thanos. Oh, I would also suggest picking up Akuba Sobek with Acid Shells. It's extremely powerful, and when paired with Arcane Arachne's 150% damage bonus, you basically create a nuclear shotgun that can clear entire rooms. But other than that, I think I've shared all I can about Oraxia for now. This type of video is a little different from what I normally do, but it's been a fun experience to make. Anyway, I think that wraps things up now, doesn't it? Well, I guess I'll see y'all around. You have a nice one.